Hello, everyone. So, I'm back on here today. I wanted to share a few realizations I've made since turning 23 and some helpful things that I wish I knew sooner, but also I'm glad I know now. And I think there's a big reason as to why I know now and not before. And I guess to start the video, I think experiences shape who we are. So, I think every experience we have and every moment of our life, even if it's bad, ultimately it will lead us to the person that we've always meant to be, that God's always wanted us to be. So, the things I've realized is that life is very difficult to balance, but once you learn how to balance it, you're free. And by free, I mean you are ultimately on a pretty upwards path. Yes, there might be some downs, but the downs will never be as bad as they are when there's an imbalance in life. So, by balancing life, I'm talking about factors like your spirituality. I'm talking about health, whether that be physical or mental, because both are just as important. I'm talking about socializing. I'm talking about your health with your knowledge. What information do you know? And I'm also talking about the person you are. So if you're a introverted, extroverted person, if you're quite ambitious, if you really value your own time and your own ability to think, I'm talking about all of these basically in a circle running smoothly instead of running like this. Okay. So what I've realized over these past few years when I've gone through some pretty big changes, I've realized that when I've gone through these changes, I've never found balance. So, an example of this is I'm a born Muslim, but over the years, I was never really close to my religion. I was quite distant. I didn't have a good perception of it. Growing up, it just wasn't the best time for me with it. And I distanced myself. I went to a school that no Muslims were at really, and it just wasn't wasn't part of my identity. I didn't feel like I felt like I had some identity with it, but I wasn't practicing, and it was just kind of there. And I knew I never stopped believing in God Almighty, but it just wasn't that, it wasn't that heartfelt belief, that real iman. We call that belief in Islam. Anyway, so last year I had a bit of a spiritual awakening, you could say, and I just was overcome by all these feelings and truths, and I really realized that Islam is the way. I found it myself. I didn't have anyone telling me you should do this, Josie, you should do that. Like, yeah, my dad and my mum and my family were always encouraging me to practice and be a better Muslim, but at the end of the day, I was an adult ready to make my own decisions. So in my eyes, I'm a revert, but I know obviously I was born, so it's very different to a revert's experience. But anyway, I'm rambling. But I had a spiritual awakening and I basically started praying, started reading Quran, started learning about Islam, and everything in my life just clicked. Everything just started making sense. Prayer was just it changed my life completely. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he answered so many of my du'as. So du'as are prayers we make in Islam. When we ask God for things, he answered so many of them. He showed me so many signs. He continues to show me so many signs. Anyway, that just made my faith in my heart grow stronger, made my belief grow stronger, and now ultimately has brought me to where I am today. But the point I was trying to make from that was when I started finding my faith again, I went through so many triumphs because I realized that, for example, during Ramadan, I realized that, yes, I was so focused on my deen, which is my faith in Islam. I was so focused on my path, was so focused on God and prayer and everything. But what I noticed was that I was completely neglecting things that also made me happy. I was neglecting exercising. I was neglecting my mental health. I wasn't like, yes, okay, it was very transformative and it was very good mentally, but there are also a lot of factors that you need to consider when you want to have good mental health, not just religion. Because obviously we all have different mental health issues. I have like anxiety, I've had depressive episodes, so it's all been a range of things. But anyway, I'm diverting. And also, another thing I wasn't doing was I wasn't socializing. Now, I feel like when you get close to God, it's a very personal experience, and you want to talk to people around you that have that same belief as you. So I wanted to be around Muslims. I wanted to, I didn't want to be around people that were going to put me back. I wanted to be around people that were going to put me forward, right? But what I've realized in this world is I've realized that, yes, okay, it's good to stick with your community. It's good to be with people that are going to bring you forward. But at the end of the day, it's not ultimately going to make you happy. Like sometimes when you meet a Muslim person, yes, okay, you connect on that level, but you might not connect on other levels. So I just felt that perspective was very flawed, that I had. And I completely, neglected socializing. I neglected physical health. I became quite sad and depressed and lost, a bit lost. But I was never really lost because I always had God there and Allah. So it's hard to say that I was at a really bad point because I wasn't. But I just realized that I could have been at a way better point if I had found a balance instead of kind of going all in and neglecting everything else. But that's kind of what happens when you find the truth. And that's kind of how I felt. I just felt like, wow, I have God now and that's all that matters. But then also, when I went through struggles, they were way worse because I didn't have, exercise to go back on. I didn't have this dopamine from socializing to go back on. So sometimes, I wasn't motivated and I wasn't, yeah. Anyway, you understand my point. So I think that when you have an imbalance of these things, ultimately it creates a person that is full but not entirely full. And so I do believe that. So continuing on with this imbalance issue, I've realized that people that have an imbalance in their life will seek happiness from short term things, things that give a short term benefit. So it's been proven that as a human being, the key to be really happy and the key to actually not even the key to being happy. The people that are the most happy in this world are those that get their happiness from experience instead of materialistic things, okay? Yes, you could buy a new car. Yes, you could buy a new top and it can make you feel really good. But it's ultimately the experiences that you have that will actually make you happy. And by experiences, yes, okay. When I used to think of this, I used to be like, I am an experienced type of person. I don't really care about having the latest shoes and all that. So ultimately, I feel like I'm quite fulfilled in that way anyway. But ultimately, when I viewed experiences, I view it as like I'd rather spend my money on going out with my family. I'd rather go on a walk. I would rather exercise. I would rather go on holiday. I would rather travel than to find my happiness from that instead of finding it from buying shoes and heels. But experiences also come with feelings we have. So love is an experience. And so when we have love in our lives, we have so many positive experiences. When you love your mum, you give her a hug every day and you share that experience. That makes you so happy. And so ultimately, that when you have imbalance in your life, you end up relying on the materialistic things, which don't give you the happiness from those experiences that I've just mentioned. Hence, you become quite an unhappy person because, once that heel, shoes, whatever it is of yours, they don't look shiny anymore or they're out of trend, there goes that happiness or there goes that quick rush of dopamine. So, what I've realized is that saying to yourself every day, even just repeating these words, it's what I say to myself every day. I don't need materialistic things to be happy. I don't need food to be happy because obviously, food is a materialistic things. When you're upset, you go get a tub of ice cream, but really, is that going to do something? No, it's not. Eating food when you need it, eating food when you're hungry is amazing. And that's what intuitive eating is. So you ultimately saying to yourself every day, I don't need food to be happy. I don't need food as a source of dopamine. I don't need materialistic things. I don't need the newest shoes, the newest clothes to be happy. What I need is love. What I need is routine. What I need is socializing. What I need is laughing. What I need is smiling, right? But another point of what I wanted to add to this is that I do feel like even to get to this part in your journey, it also takes those factors. So those factors I'm talking about that need to be balanced, such as socializing, physical health, and mental health, you need to make sure that you're in the right scape for those things. What I mean by that is that when you're socializing, you need to be socializing with the right people. Because if you're socializing with the wrong people, this imbalance can be created. Same with physical. If you're doing if you're a woman and you're doing high cortisol exercise is always at the gym and you're about to get your period and you're pushing your body too far beyond its limit and it needs to rest, you're going to get an imbalance again because that's going to create feelings of unease. It's going to create a more painful period. Does that make sense? So, yes, these factors are the ones that create balance, but also how you have those factors in your life and what little factors you have in them is also part of the balance. That's why life is so difficult to actually run smoothly, because there's just so many things that you just need to get right. But then again, that's all part of the human experience. And even as you get older, you'll never have it perfect. But I think that's the beauty of it. That's why life is like art. So yeah, I think that's what all I wanted to say. I think ultimately we're all on journeys. We're all just vulnerable little humans. We were all little kids once who just want to be loved. Even the most arrogant of people, they just want to feel love in their hearts, because as humans, we can't help but feel so happy at being loved, and can't help but those little tingly feelings that you get in your heart when you love someone. You can't help but have that make you feel fulfilled and make you have meaning in your life. So, yeah, all I wanted to get out of this was that life is difficult to juggle, it's difficult to balance, but ultimately we're all in it together, and human connection and being there for one another is very important. So, it's a good reminder.